I don't want to get to the end of my life and not have tried to follow some of my dreams. Welcome to She Leads podcast, a podcast about faith, leadership, and relationships. I'm your host, Reverend Thea Curry-Fuson, and I'm so glad that you tuned in today. Today is a special episode of She Leads. It's going to be our year-end review, a wrap-up of season 1, full of thank yous, highlights, and even a sneak peek about what's coming next. So I'm so glad that you tuned in. I started this podcast just a few months ago because I was an avid podcast listener. I had spent years, probably since 2016, enjoying the long-form podcast offers of storytelling and encouragement. And as I was beginning my ministry journey, I loved listening to other church leaders talk about the innovative and exciting things they were doing, as well as how they were building and leading teams in this new arena. And through all of that, I noticed that there was something missing. There was a lack of a female voice. There were, yes, of course, a few women who were guests on a certain couple of podcasts every now and then. But when I searched for women in leadership or other female pastors talking about their experience, I came up with very few options. And the ones that I found were usually very flowery, as if a woman can only offer a soft and sweet approach, or they were the exact opposite, encouraging and teaching me how to act like a man. I wanted a place where there were authentic and real conversations, where women were sharing what they were really facing in the realms of leadership, faith, and relationships. And so about a year before I started this podcast, I spoke it into existence. I told another female clergy, I am interested in starting a podcast. What do you think? She was like, go for it. It sounds great. And that was the beginning of that dream. Just a few short months later, I heard about a new podcast studio opened here in Pearland, and they were offering free consultations. And so I just said, well, let me go see. I don't want to get to the end of my life and not have tried to follow some of my dreams. That initial conversation was so encouraging and inspiring, and I just remember leaving thinking, I can do this. This is within my means. And just a few short months later, we launched the first episodes of She Leads. Once again, thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for being willing to step in and listen and be a part of what God is doing, just allowing me a space to share where I see that God is on the move in my life, as well as with friends and colleagues. Each week, I've offered a chance for you to join the conversation, for you to share your comments, your feedback, your questions, in the hopes that we could strive to build a real community. And this week, I have a few that I wanted to read. The first is from Lindsay regarding our surviving trauma episode. She said, the episode about domestic abuse and trauma was very moving. Thank you both for your bravery. I wanted to take a moment and also thank Whitney again for her willingness to share her story. That was such a powerful testament of, yes, there is evil and awfulness in this world, and there is also redemption and resurrection and new life that can be lived. And quite a few friends and colleagues reached out after that episode and thanked me for my bravery and even offered words of encouragement as they assumed it might be hard for me to relive that trauma. And as I reflected on that recording and even the publishing of that episode, I realized, no, it was empowering. I could talk about that time in my life, the things that I experienced and overcoming it without remorse, without shame, without guilt, or even sadness for those things that I experienced, because I can see the growth from then. I am no longer that woman. And it's only by the power of Jesus Christ that I have been made new, but I'm living that reality in a way that even the worst circumstances that I might have faced physically, they do not define me, but instead they are a piece of my history that continues to prove to me what God is really up to and what I am able to do. I also have a note from Cynthia, who said, I appreciate how open you both were with your conversation. It was an informative episode. The statistics were shocking, but understandably true. Thank you for sharing. I know that's another big hope I have with these episodes is that we would all become a little bit more aware, that we would learn about the realities that are around us, what we're facing, and how we might begin to see those signs and speak up about them way more sooner than later. Sarah also wrote about the healthy relationship, fantastic insights. When students don't have access to their phones at school, they begin to build resilience. We are witnessing a generation of experience deficit youth. And I think that's a really important note too, that these conversations have been, again, hopeful to be eye-opening and for us to create awareness, as well as how we might offer something new. One thing that Whitney shared when she was willing to come on the podcast is that she wanted to be a part of a place where women were sharing the difference they were making in the world, that they were able and willing to see their surroundings and say, it can be different, it can be new. And I love what she and her husband have started with their school and the willingness to be really wild and actually ask a child to put their phone away while they're at school so they can be present, so they can learn, but also so they can make new friends. They can build new relationships in real life and have that opportunity too. As I'm thinking about thank yous, I did want to take a few moments just to reflect and say thank you to those who have made this season so possible. Again, the viewers and the listeners, you guys have been wonderful. Your comments and support have been out of this world. Many of my listeners are first-time podcast listeners. They discovered podcast with these episodes and may not listen to any other podcasts, but I'm perfectly fine with that. As well as I know that many of you have shared on your social media, as well as just direct messages to friends and colleagues who might be inspired by what we've talked about too. I also wanted to say a big thank you to my husband, Wayne. Thank you for not ever saying that my dreams were too big or too scary or too expensive or too time consuming. Every dream that I've come up with in the 15 years of marriage, you've said yes. Even the ones that you thought were ridiculous, even the ones where you knew that it would end soon, including this one when I said, hey, can we treat this like a class? Can we treat this like a learning experience? I just want to try it out because once again, I don't want to get to the end of my life and wonder what things could have been. And he said, yes, of course, do it. Let's go. And it's just been really supportive and encouraging the whole way. So thank you very much, Wayne. I also want to thank my family and friends, those who have been the predominant listeners who were willing to engage in something new, listen to a topic that maybe they don't care too much about, but were willing to support me. Again, those are some of the folks who this is the first podcast that they've ever listened to, but were willing to learn a new technology and a new medium and join me on this journey, as well as just the love and encouragement that they've shared, as well as sharing with their friends also. I want to thank my mom. She was the second person I told that I was doing this for sure. And right then and there invited her to be a guest. And she said yes. I remember her telling me, I'm really scared, but okay, I'll do it scared. And just re-listening to that episode in a couple weeks ago, I was really, again, encouraged and inspired by what you're doing. So thank you, Mom, for also going along with some of my crazy dreams. I also want to just a special thanks to Nikki. You were my very first guest, and you too were willing to say yes to another crazy dream, to record one of our conversations, which we don't normally do, and just walk along this journey with me. Thank you so much for what you're willing to do. I do want to take another moment and thank the Pearland Podcast Studios crew, to Will, to Raul, to Jelly. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to journey with me. Thank you for the love and encouragement and support. Thank you for all the things that we have learned together this year. I am really proud to be in partnership with you and excited to see what God will continue to do. When I think about the guest overall, I am just kind of amazed that I would have had some really awesome conversations with some really wonderful women. Halfway through the season, I realized, wow, I am surrounded by women who are strong, who are smart, who are brave, and doing wonderful things. I would say 90% of my guests have been people I am in close relationship with. We are colleagues. We have worked together before. We are friends. We are just doing this thing called ministry together. And their willingness to be brave, to try something new, I think for all of them, this was their first podcast experience. And for them to come and just have an honest conversation about who they are and what they're up to and how God is weaving God's plans through all of that. I'm just really in awe of their willingness to join me in this room and have that conversation and broadcast it to all of you. And just, it really reminded me how lucky and blessed I am to be in close connection with so many wonderful women. So thank you to all my guests, to all my friends, my colleagues, my coworkers who were willing to say yes, and to the new connections I was able to meet. There's just a few people who were connected to me through a friend or colleague and were willing to come meet with a stranger and record our conversation live for the whole world to hear. And that was just a really awesome experience that I got to meet even more women who are doing really, really great things, living into who God has called them to be in different ways, and then willing to share it authentically. When I think about the guests in the episodes, I did want to point out a couple of highlights. So I know you all are looking at your Spotify Wrapped. It's telling you what your year has been like. And as podcasters, they give that to us too, to let us know some of our top performing episodes, things like that. And when I look through that, I look all the time at what the analytics are saying. But our couple of top performing episodes were Women in the Pulpit, where I talked with Reverend Kimberly Carney about what it's like to be a female pastor, to get up most Sundays and preach the word of God in a world that's still, in a faith world that still believes a lot of women don't have the right to do that. The unique challenges that women face in a pastoral role, and even how we explain what our job is to those who are maybe not churched. We also, another top episode was Who's Leading You, which was a follow-up with Kimberly, and just talking about where we're gaining strength and empowerment and encouragement and where we are looking for that too. And then another one that was a real top performer was When Leaders Fail. An honest conversation with Gina about the church hurt that she's experienced, what it means when leaders live on pedestals that are way, way too high, and how we can be a little bit more authentic and honest, and not just our leadership, but in our conversations and in our faith walk today. And our most shared episode was God at Work in Families, which kind of surprised me because while faith is intertwined in all of our conversations, it's not a lot that it's real blatant about what we're talking about. And so I thought it was interesting that that would be an episode that you, the listeners, not only liked, but were willing to share with someone else who was also maybe searching for where God might be at work in their family or how they might join in and be a part of what God is doing in families. So a couple other really high-performing episodes was The Business of Beauty, where we talked with Megan Jones, a local Pearland business owner, and what it's like to help women see the joy and beauty that they bring, tell them they can rock any outfit, and encourage and inspire them to be their best selves. Also, we talked about another episode that was great was Female Leadership Today, and just talking about how those things have changed. I believe this is the one with Nikki Gage, and we talked about how our hopes for young girls today is that in 20 to 30 years, they don't have to take the mask off. They don't have to break out of a box, that they don't even know that ever existed, that they live in this world so confident and sure of who they are and never even wonder that they could be something less just because they're a woman. Where does my strength come from? And sobriety and salvation were conversations with my mother about her journey with alcoholism and now into sobriety and how she's helping other women in sober living houses in Pasadena and LaPorte, and just what it means to, again, survive hard things and then continue to tell those stories of inspiration and support and community, and to really choose to be around women like that. Can women be leaders? This is my first conversation with Nikki and how we talked about our journeys into leadership and how we had to, again, break our own barriers of what that might mean, as well as continue to face the difficulties that still live today. What moms need and leading youth were also some top performers, which tells me that we're continuing to have an eye and a desire to reach younger people, to know that our children of all ages are so important. And it's where we need to continue to pour our focus. There's a lot that I feel like I need as a 40-year-old woman today, but I know that these younger girls need people like me willing to continue to create it, to remove the barriers, to help form a trail and to walk alongside them in their journey too. Our YouTube views, the one of the big ones that pops up there was young leadership. And I thought that was interesting that where more and more young people are is they want to hear about themselves. They want to hear about how they can step into leadership today. What are the steps that they need to be willing to take? What kind of mentors and advice do they need as they strive to find their space in the world of work and in the world of faith? I share all this just to, again, kind of recap some of the wonderful things and the conversations that I feel like we've got to have, the highlights that I saw in those conversations, and what I'm hearing from you, the listeners and the viewers, of what it is that you need and that you see too. I did think it would be fun to share just a couple of few funny behind the scenes moments. We have had a really good time here in the studio. I admitted this is scripted. We come in with a plan. We strive to be authentic, and we do have the ability to edit. And so just some of those moments have been really, really fun. Some of the words that come out of people's mouth as they get nervous on the microphone can be really fun, jokes that we still laugh on. The way certain guests have decided to pause or ask for a redo on some things that they'd like to re-say or restructure. And then even just a coughing fit that can just come up and you just got to move on and figure it out. We've had a really, really good time here in the studio. And again, I just want to thank my guest for being willing to come and try something new and do this kind of wild, crazy podcast thing with me. What I've learned from this podcast is that some of the things that I dared to do, right? Create a space for women to talk about leadership is what we've been able to do. That dream was worth chasing and really wasn't too difficult to make come true. Yeah, it took time, energy, money, resources, some vulnerable asks, but I thought about that too. I don't think anybody told me no when I asked them to come and be on the podcast. And if they did, it wasn't that impactful. I moved on and found somebody that would. Again, to create a space where women could talk openly, honestly, authentically about leadership. And what I learned from that is that it's less about a title they might be seeking. It's less about the responsibility they feel like they're owed to have, or even how the rest of the world might see them, but that so many women are in realms of leadership. They are making an impact. They are influencing, encouraging, and leading mostly just by being themselves, being who they feel called to be, still imperfect, still room to grow, but just living into what is important to them, what matters to them, the difference they feel like they can make in the world, from their own children to the CrossFit gym, to childcare centers out in Lake Jackson, just living into what they feel like is important and where they feel that God is calling them, and then being willing to share. That's what makes them a leader. No matter what their title is, no matter how much money they make, or even, again, how the world sees them, a willingness to be exactly who they are and unafraid to share it. I also really appreciated that we've had some honest conversations. I feel like we got into some real stuff. We talked about things that are real and moving and not always so perfect and beautiful, but could be a place where women just got authentic. And again, it was the relationships between me and my guests that made that possible. There was trust before they walked in the room. They were willing to sit across from a friend, a colleague, a previous coworker, and just tell the truth. It was always interesting to see the growth between episode 1 and episode 2, because there's cameras, there's lights, it's something new. But the more that we would spend time together, just sitting next to each other, talking openly and honestly, the more authentic and real I felt like each guest could be. And that was something that I really loved seeing. Something I didn't know that I was going to learn is how valuable those conversations can be, especially the more honest we could be. We were talking before we recorded this, if I would do anything different, I think I would start earlier with the honesty, that I would be willing to be more vulnerable. I would jump right into the deep end and have those tougher conversations sooner and for a longer period of time, because I've noticed that that's where the real beauty can be, when we're willing to be more and more honest with one another and with others. Also, I found that faith weaved itself in. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. That is a part of who I am that I cannot and will not take off. I understand that there are spaces that it is less appropriate to be so vocal about it, but it was really neat, no matter who my guest was, that conversation just lended itself to a space for the gospel to be shared. This was not set off to be a religious podcast, but I knew that faith was going to make its presence, and God showed up every single episode. And what I felt like were natural, unforced ways to reveal the beauty of God's work, the love and redemption that is always there, and again, revealed in authentic ways. I really, really enjoyed that opportunity to not have to always feel so polished, but could just be honest about where I see scripture revealed, where I see the work of God at hand, and where I see God making something new, because that's what God is always up to. I also noticed that people were craving that type of conversation, honest and real, wanting to push past the fluff, not wanting to feel like they needed to come in with all the perfect answers. I had several guests come with handwritten notes or typed out of all the things they were going to say, but in a few short minutes, they would just look away and look at me or look at the camera and just be honest and just be real. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing. And I feel like some of those top, performing episodes were the ones where the guests were willing to get really real and talk about that honesty. And once again, how the relationship really made that possible, where there was trust between the two of us, so that they felt they could get really honest. And even if we disagreed, we would still remain so much more than just our disagreeing points, but the whole person that we knew and loved and cared for. I've also learned through this podcast journey that one of the best things I can do as a leader, as a friend, as a pastor, as a follower of Jesus, is ask good questions and shut up. And I hope that has come across in how much time I allowed for my guests to speak, and how often I learned so much from being willing to listen to them, to give that space of, hey, I'm curious about what you think. And yes, this is a conversation, so I want to share my thoughts too, mostly in collaboration and support, but being willing to ask good questions and just listen. Listen to what these people that I care about, that I love, are doing around me, and trust that what they're saying is probably way more important than what I have to say too. And that really leads me to these things that I've learned, these things that I've experienced in just these few short months, really inspired and encouraged me to dream a little bigger and to say, what else could this medium provide? What else could this medium do? And so starting in February of 2024, First United Methodist Church Pearland, where I am an associate pastor and lead our contemporary worship service, is going to launch its own podcast called Real Talk. And the hope there is that we'll have real conversations about faith and relationships, and even all the sticky, controversial things that we Christians tend to believe and argue about. We're going to have conversations like, what does it mean to be a Christian? Is the Bible true? How do we live out this faith authentically? Why does a good God let bad things happen to good people? And how do I teach my children about this truth that I believe in a way that they'll believe it too? We're going to dive deep into some of those messy conversations. We're going to be willing to be unpolished and imperfect and get honest and real, even if we disagree. And I'm really blessed that I'm going to get to host that podcast series that's going to start in February. And I hope that you will trust me enough to join that journey with me, that you'll be willing to come alongside and dive deep into some of those tough questions. There'll still be hopefully a space where you can participate, submitting your questions, and that we'll be willing to tackle those tough issues as well. Not because we have all the answers, but as faithful followers of Christ, we feel like it's our job to be an authentic witness and to be willing to have those conversations, to not shy away or to give a blanket answer that really shuts up those who dare to question. We want to be willing to engage in those tough conversations about what it really means to have faith today, and how do we live that out, even if we disagree, even if it's imperfect. Once again, I really hope that you will plan to join me on that journey. Trust me, to come into that deeper dive into faith and those tough questions, and continue to share with your friends and family who might be wondering too. I usually close every episode with a next step. And so I have a next step for you, followers and friends, listeners. And what I would ask you to do is dare to dream. Dare to have an idea. Wild, ambitious, ridiculous idea about how your world might be more beautiful, more encouraging, more supportive, more at peace. I find it interesting how hard it is for people to dream. Often in my realms of leadership, I ask that question: if you could do anything, what would it be? If you could do anything on a Sunday morning, what would it be? If you could do anything in children's ministry, what would it be? If you could do anything in your family, with your calendar, with your time and energy, what would it be? And so few adults have given themselves the space and willingness to dream. And so I want to encourage you, as you're preparing for the next year, as you're preparing for the next season of your life, I want to encourage you to dare to dream. Think about, what is it that you want to do? What is it you want this life to mean? And dare to dream about some of those things actually coming true. We live in exciting and wonderful times where we have a lot of access to a lot of different things, but you have to be willing to dare to dream it could be different, if it ever will be. I also want to invite you to continue to support the She Leads movement. I am going to take a little break in the spring of 24 as we launch this new thing through First United Methodist Church Pearland. I have no intention of never restarting She Leads, but your support and encouragement will be helpful in that. So if you'd like to see more, if you'd like to continue to support, which I would ask that you do, visit the She Leads website, which is going to be in the show notes like it always has. There's She Leads merch there, like this awesome t-shirt. There's also some additional ways that you can support and continue to be a part of the She Leads journey. I already have some ideas about some guests and topics I'd like to talk about in the next season. So I am daring to dream and plan for that to be, and I want to invite you to continue to be on that journey as well. Also, shout out to Gina for helping me to make all the merch available. Thank you for your love and support too. Thank you once again for joining me on this journey. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time on She Leads. She Leads is produced by me, Thea Curry-Fuson, recorded and edited by Pearland Podcast Studios. All thoughts and expressions shared by the guests are theirs and not the organizations they're affiliated with. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out next week to continue the conversation on She Leads.